Wargamers, today we're going to start our unit by unit review of the new Tau Codex, starting with one of the MVP units in the book, the Riptide. Before we do that though, I want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead, hit subscribe, that way you don't miss any of my upcoming unit reviews, battle reports, or other 40k content. Okay, so let's get started just by looking at the stats and general rules. The Riptide is 14 power level and about 280 points depending on how you're going to equip it. It has a scaling movement starting at 12, weapon skill 5 up, ballistic skill at 4 up, scaling down, strength 6, toughness 7, 14 wounds, 4 attacks, not that we actually care about the attacks, leadership 8, and a 2 up save. So right off the bat it should be apparent that the Riptide is a model with some staying power. It has a lot of wounds, a high durability, and those are really things that make the Riptide valuable. And on top of that, the mobility aspect, being able to move 12 inches is nothing to scoff at, as well as some of its special rolls, and you have a really powerful platform for a main gun and also for grabbing objectives and that sort of thing. So a lot of utility built into the Riptide frame right off the bat. Riptides have for the greater good, allowing them to fire Overwatch for nearby friendly units. They also have the Riptide Shield Generator, giving them a 5-up invulnerable save. This interacts with their characteristic special rule called Nova Reactor, which in exchange for taking 1 mortal wound sometime during the movement phase, you can select one of the 3 following options. Either you can improve the invulnerable save to a 3-up instead of a 5-up, clearly good for increasing the durability of the Riptide in the face of heavy firepower. Or you can select to give the Riptide basically a jump shoot jump ability where he can move 2d6 inches in the charge phase even if he is not assaulting. This is good for getting out of line of sight or grabbing objectives or getting out of charge range. Any of these things, good use of that Nova charge ability. The third one is something you're going to use strictly for its offensive capabilities, and that is improving the number of shots for either of your 2 main weapon options. Now if you take the heavy burst cannon, which we'll get to in a moment, that improves it from a heavy 12 shot to a heavy 18 shot, and then for the ion accelerator, instead of being a variable output, it has a standard heavy 6 for both the standard and overcharged weapon types. So any of these 3 are going to be really good in improving the utility of the Riptide, but particularly you're going to be using that offensive ability, improving your weapon output to really make this guy earn his points back quickly. Riptides have the Tau Empire and Sept faction keywords. They also have the Battlesuit, Monster, Jetpack, Fly, and then XV104 Riptide Battlesuit keywords. So they're going to interact with anything that has those keywords in their phrasing. As far as how you're actually going to run the Riptide, you have 2 main options, and they're primarily stemming from how you're going to equip the main gun. The default is the Heavy Burst Cannon, which is this guy. It used to be a suboptimal choice in a lot of ways, but now has seen a pretty big improvement. It is a heavy 12 gun to begin with, strength 6, minus 1 AP, and 2 damage. Having that 2 damage right off the bat is stellar. This means that not only are you going to be able to do reliable damage to multi-wound models, but also single wound models with a Feel Pain style save are going to be just that much more susceptible. So if they have a 5-up Feel No Pain, having 2 damage really reduces the likelihood of them succeeding by 1/3. So instead of having a 33% chance of making that Feel No Pain, they're down to an 11% chance. So having 2 damage is widely valuable. It's not just good against multi-wound models. So that's the standard option. The other option is the Ion Accelerator, which used to be the go-to. Saw a lot of play as Ovesa and Farsight Enclaves, and yeah, this guy is really the anti-armor option that you have. It has a standard profile of heavy D6. Again, if you Nova charge, that moves to standard heavy 6 instead of D6, so it's more reliable. And then it's strength 8, minus 3 AP, and D3 damage standard. You can opt to Nova charge or overcharge that for strength 7, minus 3 AP, and then a flat 3 damage. So again, making it more reliable, but if you do this and you roll a 1 to hit, you suffer a mortal wound. It doesn't matter how many ones you roll, you will always only suffer 1 mortal wound if you roll any ones at all. So which of these two options are better? Well, that kind of depends. For the most part, the heavy burst cannon is going to be your jack of all trades option. It's going to be very reliable and very points efficient for a lot of different unit types. It's going to be good at clearing out tech marines or tactical marines. It's going to be good at cleaning out flak. It's going to be good at cleaning out Death Guard, light vehicles, monsters. It's going to do a lot of damage to a lot of different types of enemies. But the Ion Accelerator is geared more towards taking out those monsters and vehicle type opponents. Now, the downside of that is that if we actually look at the numbers, taking a ion cannon or even a railgun on a hammerhead is going to be between 10 and 25% more points efficient than taking an ion accelerator on a Riptide. So if you're looking for something to do anti-armor, I would recommend looking at a hammerhead and pairing it with long strike instead of looking at a Riptide, because they are cheaper, and for the points you actually get more reliable output and a greater amount of output on a single target than you do with just the Ion Accelerator on a Riptide. Now, the Riptide does have some advantages compared to a Hammerhead, namely it has an invulnerable save, it has greater mobility, it has more wounds, so you are paying for those things in the point cost, and so it still is a valuable thing if your army is lacking in durability or mobility. But overall, if you're just looking at the damage output, again, the Hammerhead is the better way to go. So with that in mind, let's say I'm going to be optimizing my army list and I'm going to be taking hammerheads for anti-armor, and I'm going to be taking heavy burst cannon Riptides for my jack of all trades type stuff. What then? Well, you have the option of taking one of three supporting, not supporting systems, but secondary weapons. You can either take two fusion blasters, two plasma rifles, or two smart missile systems, and each of these is going to have a different benefit, and it's actually going to interact a little bit more with how you play this guy in terms of which sept you take. So let's talk about that for a minute. There are 4 sept tenets that are going to benefit Riptides the most. Let's start with Tau sept. Tau gives them the ability to overwatch on 5s, and that's probably a good thing for most units, right? You can't really scoff at that. So having the ability to overwatch on 5s doubles their damage output, and especially if we're looking at a heavy burst cannon, you're going to have a fair number of hits when shooting that. You have enough volume of fire that you can actually reliably get a couple nice hits off of that overwatch. Borcan also is a good sept for them, just because the heavy burst cannon or ion accelerator are both heavy weapons, and so you're extending the range of those weapons by just that much more, and making them that much more flexible and allowing them to stay that much further away from a charging opponent. Farsight Enclaves are also something that I think actually has a nice application for Riptides, because these guys are going to be your bully units. They're going to be moving around the board, shooting at different targets, taking advantage, and really taking up board space. So they are part of your strategy for having a strong board control, and so they're probably going to be faced by something that's not too far away from them. And so having the Farsight Enclaves tenet allows them just a little bit more offensive capability if they end up in that situation. So I do think that that's actually a fairly good application of Farsight Enclaves is with Riptides. The last one that's going to benefit them is Dalith. Dalith is generally pretty weak sept in my opinion, but for Riptides, because they don't benefit from cover very often, having that inherent ambient natural cover that they get with the Dalith sept tenet is going to be very valuable, especially because they're going to be faced with high power, high AP weaponry often. Having that ability to, basically reduce that AP by 1 by being in cover is a beneficial thing. It makes you a little less forced to take the 3-up invulnerable save using the Nova reactor. So it gives you a little bit more wiggle room, and that's always good. So any of those 4 septs are going to be particularly good, but based on which you take, you're going to want to take different supporting systems. If you're taking Farsight Enclaves, for example, you're probably going to want to take Fusion Blasters, because you're going to be up close and personal more often than not. But if you're taking Borcan, which I think is probably the best option of those 4, taking something like a Smart Missile System or even Plasma Rifles can be pretty darn good. Borcan extending the range of plasma rifles by an additional 6 inches means that you're going to be able to get within rapid fire range with plasma rifles more often than you used to. Granted, it's only a 3-inch difference, but you'd be surprised how often that is, you know, a valuable difference. So yeah, I really think Borcan is probably the best sept, and because of that, I would take either smart missile systems or plasma rifles as my secondary weapon choice. Okay, with your 2 weapon choices out of the way, what types of supporting systems do you want to take? You have the option to take 2 different supporting systems, but I think the clear winners, or the clear things that you're going to want to take most often, are of course the target lock, because it allows you to move and shoot your heavy weapons without facing penalty. And then also the advanced targeting system is going to be a win, because especially with the heavy burst cannon, you have a large number of shots, and bumping that -1 to a -2 is going to make a big difference for you a lot of the time. Especially if you're bringing a smart missile system on top of that, that's an additional 8 shots that are now -1 AP, and you get a lot of bang for your buck using an advanced targeting system on a Riptide just because of the number of shots that you're putting out. Riptides can also be accompanied by up to 2 shielded missile drones, but really these guys are just overpriced shield drones. You're not going to get a lot of value out of the missile pod aspect of them, and generally you're going to be a lot better off just taking 4 shield drones as a tactical drone unit and deep striking them in using the new ability of drones to deep strike. So yeah, I really think that that's the better way to go. You don't inhibit or you don't have to overpay for shielded missile drones. You can just take 4 shield drones and get more staying power out of them and not even worry about the missile component there. Overall, that's going to be the better way to go. Finally, let's talk about stratagems. Riptides benefit from a fair number of stratagems in the new Codex. Of course, things like Branch Nova Charge really allow them to shine in almost any situation. Branch Nova Charge allows you to take 2 of the 3 Nova Reactor options. So primarily you're going to be taking the improved weapon profile option and also the 3++ or the 3-up invulnerable save. Those are going to be your go-tos, because the improved weapon option really makes a difference in your offensive ability, and then the 3++ is going to make them stick around that much longer. The thrust move ability, allowing them to move 2d6, is good in a pinch. Maybe you're going to use that more late game if you have command points left over to capture objectives and move around the board, that sort of thing. But in the early game, you're going to be focusing on keeping this Riptide alive and improving its damage output. So for that reason, Branch Nova Charge is an awesome ability. You also have things like stimula injectors that are going to benefit them primarily. There's not very many battlesuits that you're actually going to be able to use stimula injectors on, but Riptides are one of them. And being able to ignore all the damage that you've taken to date and just act like you're at the top tier of your weapon profile or your shooting profile is a big deal. We don't have a abundance of ballistic skill here. We're still hitting on 4s, so when we are hitting on 5s, that's a pretty major loss. And so being able to act as if you are in your top tier, having that 12-inch movement on top of that as well, is really important and something you're going to be using fairly often. In addition, you can also use the automated repair protocols to allow them to recoup up to D3 wounds. It's not going to be something that you'll use every turn most likely, but in a case where you are just on the precipice of going down a tier or going up a tier, it can help you jump back up into that other tier and avoid having to use stimuli injectors next turn or something like that, or of course keep them on the board another turn. So these are all going to be stratagems that work out really well. You can also look at things like command and control node when pairing with a commander to really make those heavy burst cannon shots count. So all those, I think, are really valuable stratagems that you're going to want to have on the top of your deck for easy reference throughout the game. Alright, with all that said, what's the takeaway? Well, Riptides are going to be best run using a heavy burst cannon, either a smart missile system or plasma rifles if you're running Borcan, which I think you should. put a advanced targeting system and target lock on them. Even if you disagree with me on the advanced targeting system, you have to put a target lock on these guys, just because having the hit penalty for moving with heavy weapons is just a non-starter. So they need to have the target lock. As far as which sept, again, I think Borkan is going to be your go-to option. And overall, if you're looking to pair this with some sort of anti-tank option, look at Hammerheads instead of the Ion Accelerator. I don't think it's going to be uncommon to see 1 to 3 Riptides per Tau army in general. They're really heavy hitters. They have a great number of assets in terms of their durability and maneuverability in addition to their damage output. So they're really just a cornerstone component of your army. Overall, they're good. Check them out. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and of course, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, this video was made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you like this video, consider heading on over to Patreon and joining our community there. Special thanks to NoExcusesPanda, Jordan, Paul Leuders, Giovanni DiMaggio, TauOswell, Deverson, Jared Egeler, Nick Steele, Max Harrison, and Youhei Penguin.